Check.
Okay.
Check.
Live and ready to go. Check. Yep.
Hey everybody, it's Rob. We're just about to get started with this week's episode. Less than 10 minutes left. While you got a couple of minutes here, why don't you go check out OTheAnthem.com. It's where you can find everything O The Anthem, including the merch store, the podcast, and all of the videos. Open up a new tab.
Anchor.fm/O The Anthem is the place where you can get direct links to all the podcatchers you use to listen to our show every week.
Did you know we record every episode live on Facebook? Of course you do. But make sure that you're liking the page and turning on notifications so you get notified when we go live.
We make a ton of video content between the podcast, the short films, Heretics. YouTube.com/O The Anthem is the place for it all.
And of course you can find me on any social network at Robert N. Cheek.
And me at LegendCB5.
And you can find the podcast at O The Anthem on all your social networks.
Speaking of the election, Trump, any weird bit of political thinkery here.
He's 10 moves ahead of you, Corey. You
decided
don't know where
to
this
go
is going.
onto Fox News and admit that he's holding up post office funding because he doesn't want the Democrats to be able to get the mail-in voting that will be so corrupt. But the part that bothers me the most is that if I went on television, if I had a press conference, right, and invited all the news stations, and I went out and on a lectern, and I was like, "Hey, I have a plan to take away people's mail before it gets to them. Like, I'm not going to tell you exactly the means by which I do it, but you know, maybe I'll come up on a mail truck while they're delivering the mail, and I'll steal out a couple cartons, and I'll just run down the street with them, and I'm the mail burglar now, you know?
Yeah.
But I plan on fucking with the mail. You know who comes to visit me?
Secret Service?
Secret Service.
Yeah.
Who's in charge of the mail. And they go, you realize that fucking with the mail is a crime. And I'm like, what? And then I would get arrested and I would spend time in jail. Even if I didn't fuck with the mail. I'm pretty sure that just stating intent to mess with the operation of the post.
If someone saw you with a cherry bomb and a match at a mailbox, I think that is a substantial enough step for them to be like, oh, he's about to fuck with the mail.
He's taking a discernible step towards fucking with the mail?
Yeah, and even if you're like, hey, I was going to drop it by the mailbox. I was going to put it in the UPS box, not the blue box.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Substantial step towards damaging the mail.
I just don't get how I could be arrested for that sort of thing. And Trump is going out and admitting to impeding the ability for the Postal Service to do their job. And it's like, you know, like, oh, it's just a hard line negotiation. Like, no.
Here's the difference.
I'm pretty sure it's not.
If your boss came out and said, I'm going to give 10% of the people here a raise, and I'm going to fire 20% of you. And then eventually he just gives everybody a 1% raise, and you feel lucky because it could have been part of the 20% that was fired.
Yeah.
You only got 1%. He's allowed to do that because he's the boss.
Yeah.
So he's allowed to do that because he's the boss. But the problem with being the boss is that usually in a corporation, there is somebody like the shareholders who are going to be like, is that the Trump, not satisfied with ruining the country as much as he has thus far, has now decided to wade into the movie industry.
Yeah.
And you may disagree with me, but I don't think that this. The SEC, no. Who is it that's doing this? It's an administration. One of the administration.
I don't remember offhand.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Whoever it is saying that they are.
I think it's with the Justice Department.
It could be Justice.
Yeah.
It's a consent decree with the Justice
Right.
Department. Is saying that they are about to roll back the consent decrees that were entered into pursuant to US v. Paramount, which, quick reminder for everybody, is the decision that basically told studios you can't have a monopoly on everything. You can't make the movies and showcase the movies in your own theaters, and absent that, you also can't force a different theater to buy a big block of your films.
I mean, essentially what was happening was all the studios owned theaters. And, like you would see Disney movies at the El Capitan kind of thing,
Actually, Disney not party to that consent decree.
Well, they are, but...
Now they are.
No, they always were.
No, they were not considered one of the major theaters then. I'm telling you, I read the case.
Okay.
In 34, they were not considered it, which is why, by the way...
It was 48.
48. In 48,
Yeah.
they weren't considered it. And that's why they got to keep El Capitan, because they owned the theater, and then they joined and actually bought an entire...
I think there was a thing in the original judgment, though, that you were allowed to own, like, single sort of spots. You just
yes.
weren't allowed to own a... Because, I mean, like, there was, like, a Paramount theater in Times Square.
Yeah.
And Paramount would have hypothetically been able to keep that theater.
Yes.
But
Except
they
for
just
it's a
wouldn't have been
horror
able to own, like, a chain. Like,
So what happened is
Yeah.
that Disney got big enough that they bought a small chain of theaters, and then the Justice Department was like, "Oh, hey, this applies to you now.
Yeah.
So either we're going to sue you, or you can agree to join and divest yourself." And then they did, but they kept El Capitan.
I mean, basically, what it did was when I tweeted about it earlier, there's only been a couple times in movies where there's sort of been like one specific incident that became like a paradigm shift for the industry, and the first one was sound. When sound got into movies, like everything changed from that point on. And all the stars that used to be fell off considerably, and it became like an entirely new industry almost overnight. The moment was US v. Paramount, because it changed how the movie business could operate, because they weren't allowed to own every part of the production chain anymore.
Followed many years later by the Friends decision.
Well, that one wasn't like a paradigm shift, but it was different. That one was weird to explain.
Yes.
Like that's a like yes, saying awful things about actors in the room is part of the creative process. Like it has been decided.
Yeah. This is a really horrible line of questioning. Why would we want to put this in our show? Schwimmer's terrible. Let Schwimmer do it. Like, okay, we'll just write this in for Schwimmer.
But yes, so they're discussing dropping basically the decision that came from US v. Paramount, arguing that the movie industry is different than it was before.
Right.
But I argue that this might be more evidence that we need it more now than ever, because every single one of these streaming services is built off of the property that we own and are able to get the rights back for. I mean, like, the idea of, Warner Brothers was the studio who made all these, like The Office and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now Warner Brothers is owned by AT&T, which has HBO Max. So we get The Office coming back to the Warner Brothers owned thing.
Yeah.
So it's Warner Brothers company owning a Warner Brothers distributed product on a Warner Brothers streaming network. We're basically doing the same exact thing, only in a different way. But they're arguing that because now it's all digital, it's not quite the same thing.
Right.
And now, as a consumer, you're going to have to buy 15 different things because there's no like real free market of the ability to find the show. Like,
this is in effect, and you are already. This week on the The Anthem podcast, we're going to talk about Marco and Laura visiting Louisiana. Nope, this is not a friendly trip, even despite of COVID. Those are two hurricanes, folks. We're going to discuss the Fujiwara effect in the California wildfires and all things weather. You'll get your update here. We're going to talk about QAnon. If you don't know what it is, you will after this episode. because obviously Trump knows about that as well. He talked about it in the lead up to the GOP convention, which we're going to be discussing as well. Another public shooting by police, Jacob Blake in Wisconsin. We're going to discuss more about the USPS, that's the Postal Service controversy, Steve Bannon getting arrested, and Trump's inner circle falling apart. You're going to be hearing about all of that on this week's episode of the OD Anthem podcast.
Hello, party people. This is Corey, and this is the podcast.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Rob. Welcome to episode 333. Have we really been doing it this long? Of the Anthem podcast.
Half of the way to 666.
I was going to say, and lucky for you guys, 300 of those episodes have been in 2020, so we got a huge catalog. We're coming to you from the hashtag OTALA studios, high above the 110 freeway in downtown Los Angeles, California. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. But first, we need to start down in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes, we
where things are aiming up to be pretty bad here in the next day or two, as Hurricane Laura and Hurricane Marco are looking to make shore here soon.
That's absolutely right. Sorry, everything's out of order now. And now I'm stressing out that it's not in order. But here we go. So Marco and Laura, if you haven't heard, this is a weird situation arising in the Gulf of Mexico. That is that there are two hurricanes, although I did read just before we went live now, Corey, that Marco has been downgrading to a tropical storm.
Okay.
So
I
good
think
news,
Laura
bad
is a
news.
tropical storm right now, too, but gaining power.
Gaining strength up towards a hurricane. So I guess we have two tropical storms in the Gulf of Mexico. Laura, I believe, did make landfall in Dominican Republic as a hurricane, lost strength back to a tropical storm, now is looking to gain strength as it crosses the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because I don't know if you know this, Corey. Global warming is a farce. Don't you dare say that global warming is a real thing and that it's powering storms that are doing something to the environment.
Well, I mean, what always amazes me is how often we seem to be getting these once-in-a-lifetime storms.
So strange.
We got Katrina and Sandy, and I feel like we can name half a dozen other ones.
Let's back up. Katrina, 2005.
Yeah.
Once-in-a-lifetime storm. Rita, same place. 3 years later in 2008, once-in-a-lifetime storm.
Yeah.
Sandy, winter hurricane. Those don't happen. 2012. We had a couple of quiet years in there where there was small hurricanes that were impacting local areas. Maryland got hit by a hurricane, if you want to call it that, but it was it landfalled in North Carolina as a hurricane and then just brought a lot of rain to Maryland. But now here we are. It's 2020, and we've already had two hurricanes hit the U.S. One, I believe, grazed Florida and went off. The other one went through the Outer Banks of North Carolina, grazed off. And now Louisiana is in the crosshairs of not one, but two tropical storms.
And I mean, we're saying Louisiana mostly because the way that the projections are looking, it looks like it's going to sort of hit in the area between New Orleans and Houston.
Yes.
But to be fair, we don't know what exactly happens because they're based off of projections. So you'll see a bunch of different projections of where this thing's going. But, obviously New Orleans and Houston, two very large population bases. And the people who live in the perimeter of those places are obviously a large population base. So.
I was going to say, luckily, like every dystopian future we've ever worried about, there's absolutely no people living in between those two places. So if it plows into the Gulf Coast of Texas between Houston and Louisiana, or, along the panhandle of Florida, if it makes a hard right, no one will be impacted at all.
No, I mean, barely any. And the great news is we're not going through a pandemic at the same exact time.
Absolutely
where
not.
People
Yeah.
are being urged to stay in their homes as much as possible, and the potential of storms taking away their homes at the exact same time.
So as Marco is about to make landfall tomorrow, late today, early tomorrow, basically what people are worried about most is the fact that even if it's a tropical storm, that means that the sustained winds are under 40 or at 45 miles an hour or less, gusts no higher than 90 miles an hour. I don't know if you've ever stood in a 90 mile an hour wind.
Yeah.
Also very strong. And there's not a lot of great building.
Mm-hmm.
It's wood frame.
Yeah.
California, we got to worry about earthquakes, so relatively strong buildings, concrete foundations. East Coast, up, Maryland, where we're from, basements and, strong places. But when you get down to the Gulf Coast, it's a lot of we built on marshland. This entire development's just on marshland.
Stilts.
Yeah, so we buried some steel down into the ground, built a house on top of it. Shouldn't cause any problem, except for, if a once-in-a-lifetime hurricane comes through. Then
Every 2 to 3 years, yeah.
So, so you basically have people who have been worried about getting infected by going to hospitals, going to schools, going to a convention center.
Yeah.
And now they may have to flee their homes because of a hurricane and go to a convention center or a school or, God forbid, they're injured, a hospital. So it's going to be interesting. And the thing about this storm that I know that everyone has heard about, and I wanted to actually just discuss a little bit, was something called the Fujiwara effect or Fujihara effect. And that is, it's interesting because I actually learned about this in talking about galaxies. So we see this on Earth, but when two galaxies collide, it's a different effect, but it's similar. And I learned about this because it was this is similar to the Fujiwara effect, which you've already known about. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Let me go look about this. But when two spiral galaxies collide, they essentially...
You know what my Google search was earlier today? What is the Fujiwara effect? Because I saw it on the rundown, and I was like, oh.
Better figure out what that is.
I don't want to sit here and be Rob going well, you know what the Fujiwara, everyone knows, right? And I'm just like, yeah, of course. It's
I am so happy that...
in the first season of True Detective...
I'm so happy that it's making you broaden your horizons and learn new things. But if two galaxies start to collide, they don't just run into each other unless it's literally a direct impact. What they do is they start to orbit each other, and then one absorbs the other, or they eventually tear each other apart and then reform. But the Fujiwara effect is something similar with hurricanes, where if two storms come with tropical depressions that are spinning the same direction, meaning, I don't know if everyone knows this, but in the Pacific, storms spin one way. And in the Atlantic, they spin the other way.
Yeah.
Just the matter of the way that it forms in the tropics.
Yeah, if you've ever flushed a toilet in Australia, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, which is that really a thing? I feel like that's not a thing, right?
I'm pretty sure it is a thing.
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. I don't think water spins the other direction in Australia.
I'm pretty sure you're wrong. I'm pretty sure it's the equator. Whether you're north or south of the equator.
So what happens if you're right on the equator? Does it go straight down? It doesn't spin?
You don't get water on the equator.
No. Okay. Well, so anyway, this effect...
Our system is not built for that kind of instability.
See, because my first instinct is always to go back to that Simpsons episode where the American government builds a huge machine to make the water spin the right way. And I'm like, that makes me think it's not a real thing. But nonetheless, so the Fujiwara effect, if two storms that are spinning the same direction come within 900 miles of each other, they essentially start to interact with each other. And rather than continuing on the pathway that they were going to take, they start to orbit a common center in space. And not in space, in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And this can have two bad effects. One, if you were off the coast of Japan and this were to happen, essentially you would get hit by one storm, hit by the other storm, then hit again by the first storm as they start to orbit around and not really move. They stay in position. This can be bad. If one storm is significantly stronger than the other, it will absorb the smaller storm. It will change its track in a way that's not predictable. If they're both pretty strong, they will, orbit each other. If they are about the same, a lot of times they will bounce each other off. Again, sending it in a weird track that's not predictable. Marco is right now the much less strong storm. Laura is building in strength and is likely to be more strong. If the two storms get within 120 miles of each other, they can actually combine, no matter what their strength or their size is. And that's when you get ridiculously strong storms. I bring this up only so that you at home can learn something new. That again, you have a reason to Google it and find out something new about it. But the reality is that
we're gonna learn something new too for sure today after the show, because I was just Googling the Coriolis effect, which is what
the water spinning
thing is.
Yeah.
And I've got like a page full of Google results that are like completely contradicting one another. So I have to spend the time to like, I can't, I'm just clicking on things. I'm not like noticing where the sources are and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I gotta do this for real later when I'm not broadcasting.
You have to separate your old post on the Anquan Bolden websites under the name Q from what might be legitimate. But I bring that up so
the hurricanes are caused by the gay marriage.
I bring that up just so everyone can essentially know that news is bringing up the hurricanes and the Fujihara effect because they want to make a big news story. But the reality is, in a small space like the Gulf of Mexico, it's not likely to happen. You're not going to have two storms that are equal in strength, and they tend to move quickly towards the coast. We've seen Marco pick up speed, and he's going to make landfall. It's going to make landfall tomorrow or tonight as we're recording this. Last night as you're hearing it, and Laura is not bound in until Wednesday morning. So because of those impacts, it's likely not going to happen. But every story that I looked up about the hurricanes always mentioned this as like, well, this could possibly happen. And then somewhere in the midst, there's a scientist who's saying like, well, there's like a 1% shot of this happening.
Yeah.
And that is, let's bury all of that information at the bottom, because people like Rob might read it, but most people are going to read the first paragraph and be like, this is the worst thing that could ever happen, 2020. But we should focus on the fact that there are two hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico at the same time.
If it does end up happening, though, I think that we are, in fact, dealing with a vengeful and angry God as opposed to a loving and forgiving one. I think he's trying to start over.
It's funny for me that you still believe after 2020 that there is some sort of omniscient being, and that we're just not in the
favor of that.
No, just in the matrix of some higher being's computer program that has, much like Vanilla Sky, decided it's going to run the most horrific version of the program possible and just see what happens.
Well, and in regards to natural disasters, which are furthering proof of global warming going on here, California, where we are right now, is dealing with quite a lot of wildfires.
Yes.
It's wildfire season in Los Angeles, or in California. The temperatures outside are, what's the scientific term for it? Ridiculous.
Yes.
It's very hot. And
not for humans.
Not fit for man nor beast.
No, really.
And it's really the amount of acreage that is being, it's over 1 million acres so far. There's 13,000 firefighters out there battling blazes all over the state. A lot of it's in Northern California, but there are some sort of in like the Angeles National Forest and a little bit like Antelope Valley area, stuff like that. Sort of in the periphery of Los Angeles.
If you want to know how busy we are this week, I'm not even going to get into the fact that of those 13,000 firefighters, something like 6,000 of them are prison inmates who are forced to go out there as a condition, 13th Amendment, slavery.
Yeah.
I bring it up on the Rob Chief for President, the most recent 10 actions, so you should check out that video.
There we go.
There are people fighting fires, and they're prisoners, so they're making what, like $1? I think we said last time, $1 a day.
I think it's like $2.20 or something like that, but it's certainly not a what we would call a living wage.
Yeah, definitely not. And if you need a further sign that we have angered the deity, whatever of the 1,500 current deities you may believe in, we're yet still in the depths of a pandemic, although it looks like, Corey, that things are getting a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, though. And, I mean, like, we're still way higher in terms of cases than we were when this whole thing started. I mean, like, if you look at the curve, like, when we started shutting everything down and telling everyone to go away, it was roughly the case numbers were still higher or still lower than they are right now. So basically what you saw is a humongous spike. What?
They can see the curve right next to your face.
Oh, excellent. Perfect.
Yeah. So we started shutting down mid-March, and you'll see that is about a third of the way to where we are now.
Yeah.
So.
Or half. I guess that might be a more charitable way of putting it.
We could say half, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean,
we thought we were in the depths of a surge, and it just couldn't get any worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and thankfully, people did try and stay inside when cases first started kicking up. But now, once it dipped down, that small little dip we had there was when everyone said, hey, let's open things back up. And then things got really bad again. And then things started shutting down a little bit. And then started going down a little bit. So this seems to be corollary in some sort of way to me. Maybe I'm just a big dum-dum and I don't know how to read these things. But like,
let me ask you.
It seems to me the less people who are out there like in the same area together, the less virus we have.
Yes. And I had this thought earlier today. What do you think is the connection between, I'm going to call it the Baltimore murder rule, where what is the one time where murders slow down in Baltimore?
Winter.
Because it's cold outside.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the reverse Baltimore murder rule where it's like so dang hot out that no one's going out? And they're like, I'm just going to stay at home. I got to stay in the AC. And we're seeing the cases go down because they're staying inside. We have a heat wave across the whole country right now.
I mean, I think that could have a part to play. Like, there are a lot of people, crazy people, who like to go out when it's hot. I don't understand this. No. Like, oh, it's 100 degrees. I got to get to the beach. I'm like, that's the last place I'd want to be.
You're going to cook yourself? Are we sacrificing to some deity? I don't understand.
This is a popular point in today's podcast. The point is that I think that, yes, there's probably more people who are trying to avoid the heat and staying inside, which is nice. I think there are more people who are becoming rational about the idea that maybe the things that they're doing aren't necessarily of peak importance.
You have so much faith in humanity. I have absolutely none.
There's certainly some people out there who don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I think college students are right up at the top of the list because, and you know what? I can't even necessarily I can't say that I wouldn't have been in the same position if we were going to college right now as opposed to.
We were young and dumb once.
Yeah, we did stupid things too. I would hope that I would not be one of those kids, but I can't say I wouldn't be. That's the problem.
There's a video that exists of someone drinking Coke out of a bowl. Like
or getting hit in the face with a hockey ball. Like there are many dumb college videos out there. So I don't know.
Things.
Yeah, I think the problem is that different parts of the country seem to be completely different in terms of how the virus is hitting there. So I'm thinking a lot about Maryland because I see all my friends back in Maryland. They're going to restaurants. There seems to be some element of social distancing and let's eat outside more and all that sort of stuff that's going on. But it doesn't seem like they ever shut down the same way that California did. Right.
Yeah.
And it also seems like they never had they had the spike that everyone had at the beginning. They had a second spike like everyone had, but neither one of those ever elevated to the point where it was, 5-alarm fire. Everyone in Maryland is the epicenter or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it seems like if I'm home, if I was in Maryland this whole time, I would go to Royal Farms. I would have my mask with me in case they asked me to put it on. But, I'm living my day-to-day life with just a mask in my pocket in case I need to wear it.
Yeah, kind of
to go in someplace,
California is weird, and New York.
And I'm seeing, people going out to, bars are closed or something like that. But I'm seeing people gathering together in groups and, sitting by pools and nobody's wearing masks and everything like that. And I think in terms of California levels, I'm like, this is a really bad idea.
Yeah.
But
I would say if you are in Maryland, the Market Street Pub is open, only outdoor seating though. They're literally, you cannot go in, as far as I know, you cannot go into the restaurant. They come out to serve you. They bring you your drinks. They're doing live music outside. They worked with the town to shut down the street right next to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And now the serving area is the street that is closed for special events. It's just kind of a long special event now. California, we don't shut down streets for that. We just pack a sidewalk with as many tables as I can fit in front of my 40-foot wide table or my street front. So I think you've identified a very important problem here. Number one, college kids. Number two, 30-year-old women who act like college kids. Number three, everyone who isn't taking it as seriously as they absolutely should.
Well, and the other thing, too, that I'm thinking a lot about, just because I experienced this when I dropped you off the other day in Hollywood. I was driving down the street, and it seemed like there was an 80% no mask situation going on in Hollywood.
But now,
and I would also say that of those 80%, 100% of them look to be tourists from somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
That decided like, oh, it's really cheap to fly to LA right now. Let me go. Fuck this coronavirus thing. It's not real. And they get on the plane and they come out here and
They get the virus and they go.
This new group of people either brings the virus or takes the virus and brings it somewhere else.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really interesting things that's going on with the anonymized cell phone data of showing like where groups of people have gathered and where they spread and how the virus is going. It's like a dumb version of contact tracing. It's like the version of contact tracing we're allowed in America, which is like Sturgis, for instance. The Sturgis just had their big annual bike rally and motorcycle rally. I don't want to people like thinking little like
you say
streamers
bike,
on the end of like
I show up with a top only helmet and tights.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm in the wrong place. All right.
Come rolling in on your scooter like, oh, I am outclassed here.
Yeah.
But yeah, that just happened a week ago or something like that. And there's already, or 2 weeks ago, I can't quite remember. Time is
It means
a
nothing.
mystery.
Yeah.
But you can see where, all of a sudden there wasn't a lot of cases in South Dakota. And then all of a sudden there's a lot of cases in South Dakota right after this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a surge in cases where people were coming from with their bikes and stuff like that. So
And
you
also-
go to Sturgis from Florida and now you're bringing it back to Florida. And now a bunch of people in Florida are getting sick.
Small town in Iowa, which is not where it is, but I just can't remember the state, that happens to be 1 day's motorcycle ride away from Sturgis, gets an outbreak. Well, that's because everybody went to the Days Inn in this little small town.
Yeah.
And they had picked it up in Sturgis. They dropped it off on their way through, going back home. They went to a restaurant. They stayed in the hotel. And then hotel staff gets infected. Restaurant staff gets infected. They take it to their families. And this is how pandemics work.
Well, and a similar thing was I was reading about this in terms of Vegas. Like one of the hotels had 400 cases in like one weekend, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't want to pick a random hotel. So let's just say Las Vegas Casino, right?
Sure.
You go there and there's 400 sick people. There's only, 3,000 people there. So there's a good number of, it's not like you're running into one out of every 100 people has the virus kind of thing. And, if you're taking precautions, you're limiting your ability to get sick, but it's not a 100%, it's the condom. It's a 99.9% effective if everyone uses it 100% properly. There's going to be mistakes, yes, but we can limit this. But if you just tie the condom around your dick and not actually put it on, then you're not doing it the way that it's supposed to be done.
And
if
if
you're wearing your mask around your neck like it's a beard protector, then it is not protecting you from the virus, you know?
The jerk at the end of the table blowing on the dice, and then you don't think, and
Yeah.
you grab the dice, and you roll, and now enjoy.
Well, I
All
mean,
over your hands.
there's two other things here that I think are helping with the surge falling. One of the bad things, one of the bad elements that is leading to this, I think, is that there isn't as much spending power in America right now, especially with people who were using the enhanced unemployment benefits. If you are going from making $700 a week on your unemployment to making $100 a week, you're not thinking as much about, like, oh, can I buy this little trinket that I could use? Like you're thinking about how do I afford to not get thrown out of my apartment right now? Or how do I eat or afford my medical care?
Just based on the people I see on Facebook, those of us like myself who are upper management somewhere and who are working are also generally the ones who are like, hey, I still have a paycheck coming in and that's great. I'm also very scared of getting the virus. I'm not going to go out. So you get a mix of like, yes, there are the people who are maybe still going to work, myself included, who have to go to the office. I think I'm already exposing myself enough going to the office.
Yeah.
I am not going to go out in my own life unless I absolutely have to. We're going to go grocery shopping and CVS run, and that's basically it.
Well, and I mean, like, there's things that I genuinely like to do that I'm not doing right now, and there's a push and pull a little bit. So, like, some of my favorite things to do are go out to restaurants and eat dinner or go to the movies. Two things that I just cannot, under any circumstances, do right now. Even if I felt comfortable enough to, like, go eat al fresco out on a sidewalk somewhere, I don't, like, it's not the same thing. And, you're ordering food. We ordered tacos the other day. They were delicious for what they are, but you also have to recognize that it took me 15 minutes to get from where I picked up the tacos to bring them home. And in that 15 minutes, there was a degradation to the food quality. That's as opposed to if we just all ate tacos there, they would have
Burgers and
been
fries,
amazing. Yeah.
Pizza. There's nothing that survives the trip from the restaurant home in the same condition.
Right. It's just
never as
not the same food as if you
Yeah.
ate it there. And I'm trying to do little things that feel safe-ish, that allow me some level of satisfaction, or like being inside all day is like draining on my ability to understand, I'm going stir crazy a little bit. So, like I went to Nordstrom Rack not too long ago because I like looking around at the clothes and getting out. There was nobody there. I was like
such a fancy boy you are.
I was one of 15 people or something in the store. It felt safe. I was like in and out. It's a large space too.
Yeah.
Like it's like an airplane hangar as opposed to like a small condensed store.
A boutique, if you
Yeah. So I mean, like all those things made me feel more comfortable. But like you have to sort of at some point you got to get out of your house. You have to do something. You can't like do this forever kind of thing. It's just going to impact your well-being.
I think the things that's scariest of all this is the number of people who are okay with 170,000 dead.
Yeah.
That's really, really stressful for me.
Well, I mean, the thing that always comes back to me is that it's not like this elsewhere in the world. And that's really I get that there are differences between Japan and the United States or something like that. But if you look at how Japan has handled the virus, remarkably well. Their economy barely had a moment where it's, like they had a shutdown at one point. If I remember correctly, it was 3 weeks or something like that.
Yep.
They got shit under control, and then they were like on top of testing and contact tracing and where have you been and who have you been exposed to, and we got to tell those people and stuff like that. And when you hear about like a huge spike in another country, and you're just like, oh my God, Japan must have 8,000 cases today or something like that. And it's
40.
like, no, they had 12 cases. And you're just like, that's a huge spike. And again, there's a difference between a small island country where people are, you can't travel to and stuff like that.
What do you think the population of Japan is?
Well, it's not 350 million people.
But astounding to me,
Yeah.
100 million people.
Right.
But so it's like 1/3 the size. And then still, though, you're comparing a breakout is 12, 20, 40 cases. And
It's
we're
not
dealing
1,000 deaths a day.
I was going to say, I'm going to get the first image back up again. Where is it? With the curve.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an improvement. We're at 40,000 new cases a day, and that is an improvement over what it was before. But I want to give you a chance. I'm going to go back to the other graphic as well that I had here, which is the fact that who thinks it's okay that 170,000 people have died?
Apparently Republicans. There was a poll put out here. This is CBS, I believe. Am I reading it?
Yeah.
CBS News. Whether or not the number of deaths are acceptable or not acceptable based off of party affiliation. Democrats, 10% acceptable for 177,000 deaths.
I also want to talk to that
90% not
10% of
acceptable.
Democrats. Wait, who the fuck are you? Come on.
Something tells me that some people still think somewhere in their mind, like, there's nothing that could have been done to stop it. So therefore, like, some amount of people were going to die, and we're doing everything we can, and we were behind the, like, we just got slammed and nobody else could have done this. Like, even if Biden was in, it would have been a little bit better, but, like, 30,000 people are going to die somehow. So,
So
like
170 is not that bad.
right. Maybe they're rationalizing it somehow. Independents, it's a 1-3 split, 33% acceptable, 67% unacceptable. But then you get to the Republicans, 57% acceptable, 43% unacceptable. This is where I just don't, I don't really understand, because it's never acceptable. That's the problem. Like, I can understand if you said that a certain number of people are going to die in car accidents where a wheel falls off the car and hits somebody.
Yeah.
Like 10 people are going to die every year because this type of accident happens. I don't know what the real number is on that, but like, act of God, force majeure, dumb fate, whatever it is. Some people will die every single year and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe there's some rationale of this is what's happening in the United States, but to think that there wasn't anything that we could do better or that we can do right now that would improve things, like, I keep thinking about me on set, right? So I'm supposed to, if I follow the union guidelines that have been sort of put out as far as how often people are supposed to get tested on set and what the production's responsibility is for keeping people safe on set, I'm supposed to get tested 3 times a week because I deal with actors. I'm close to actors. So if I have to get tested 3 times a week, and the actors have to get tested 3 times a week, and a couple other people have to get tested 3 times a week, it means you have to have enough tests for all these people every single week, and you have to have the ability to get these tests turned around in a timely manner.
Oh, I think they're encouraging they're encouraging the fast test, right? The one that's like instantaneous.
Yeah, but I mean,
Maybe
like,
not
you know,
accurate,
all of these things, like, you can't. It seems like baseball can get tests and football, and you know, like people can buy these tests if they need to, but it's not out there as much as humanly possible. And a month ago, California was saying, don't get tested.
Yeah.
Like, if you do not show symptoms, if you don't think that you've encountered somebody, or you're not essential worker, like a nurse or something like that, and you need to get tested, like,
save the test.
Yeah. Save it for the people who really need it, kind of thing. You know,
well, I mean, looking at that number again, if, you know, forgetting about heart attacks or car accidents, if I had said a foreign invader has now invaded the United States.
So real quick, Japan, just because I mentioned it randomly and I didn't have the numbers off the top of my head, but 60,000 was a number here.
Total cases.
Yeah. Confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus. A resurgence in Tokyo and other urban areas shows no sign of slowing. So this is a similar problem that a lot of the world is dealing with, where city population bases where people are on top of each other, and Tokyo especially. I don't know if you know.
Yeah,
it's like New York or Mumbai with people are stacked on top of each other. So that makes a lot of sense. But still, you know, 60,000 as opposed to, where are we at the U.S. right now? 800,000.
Yeah, but we're at 45,000 a day.
Yeah.
That we're almost hitting them every single day.
Yeah.
But again, hey, looking at the number that we had just showed with 57% acceptable, 43% non-acceptable. If I told you that a foreign invader had invaded American shores, and because we were so unprepared, our losses are at 170,000.
Yeah.
And we're just throwing bodies at the problem to slow the invasion, I would expect a 57 to 43% break where it's like, well, why weren't we more prepared? But, you know, there's someone invading. I understand. We're going to take some losses, and if that's acceptable to defend a country. We're talking about a virus.
Yeah.
That very clearly at the beginning, again, we can look at New Zealand. We can look at Japan for what it's worth, South Korea for what it's worth, other countries, and just say they were able to do something about this. Why were we not able to? How can you, in your right mind, say 170,000 dead is an acceptable amount in that situation? Everything's controllable on our part, and still.
And to be honest, we're gonna move into like the conventions and stuff like that right now, but I think that what America has really missed in this whole thing is the kind of national dad thing that usually happens when we're all in a horrible situation together, whether it's 9/11 or some sort of war, or that there used to be the like presidential address from the Oval Office or the Rose Garden, depending on how the news, what type of news it was. Yeah. There's been none of that. It's you can't trust Cuomo because he doesn't know what he's talking about, and you know, he killed a bunch of people in nursing homes and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you know, like, not everyone's going to be perfect on this. I think everyone's factored in. There's going to be some the broken eggs in this omelet kind of thing. But you know, there's one thing if you're trying to do your best as opposed to criticizing how other people are doing it and not having anything to say about it yourself. That's the problem. So many of these Republicans who I hear talking about it are sort of like, you know, like, well, it's the Democrats who are holding this hostage and making this a big deal. And it's like, no, like, do something. Just at the very least come up with another, like, reason why this is happening. Like, if you said this is all happening because, you know, prayer is out of America or something like that, that's why coronavirus is spreading.
You're crazy, but okay.
Show me some stats. Show me some science that shows me this. Mm-hmm. And if there seems to be a direct correlation, then I will believe you. But you're going to have to beat the scientists who have been able to figure out the 6 feet and how far droplets projectile, all these sort of things.
Why masks work?
Yeah, like that seem very well founded in a scientific basis. So I mean, like it could be something completely ridiculous, and you're willing to make that the hill you die on. But unless it is more responsible than what is out there right now, or more assurant of us getting out of this situation, that I don't know what to say.
Well, I got two things for you, Corey. One, if you thought we hadn't heard from the president enough, we're about to hear from him a lot. 4 times over the next few days as he speaks during the convention. Speaking during a political rally, not to the American people about their problem.
Right.
If there's anything more Trump, I don't know what it is. But we'll get to that. I think the bigger problem you have is that you're expecting more of people than they are able to give you. And I think that is why we really need to talk about, we haven't talked about it before, but we really need to talk about QAnon, what it is, and why it is impacting life so much right now.
Yeah, and, you know, there have been many, I think we've made sort of passing references to QAnon at points.
Mostly.
Yeah. You know, Trump retweeted some QAnon thing, blah, 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 at some point or another during the course of the podcast. But I've really specifically not wanted to talk about it because I didn't want it to make it seem like it was a legitimate political argument that should be made.
Spoiler alert, it's still not.
Yeah, it's still not. But I mean, like we can at this point, people who are associating with QAnon are getting elected to are winning surefire House seats and stuff like that. There's one in Georgia. There's one in Florida. That places where they haven't elected a Democrat in decades, you know? So it's one of those, a couple of these people are going to become congressmen. Mm-hmm. And you can argue that Trump is not doing anything to persuade these people differently, that this is ridiculous, because it helps him in some sort of way. I don't get necessarily why, but it helps him to be this person. But anywho.
Well, no, it's the chaos, though. That's why it helps him. Because his people will always be his people. And if he can cause chaos with everyone else, and he keeps his people.
If it makes it seem... so here's how it benefits Trump, I guess, is that if it looks like he is the sole person who's fighting up against this evil stream of, like, leftist aggression from every single form of the world, then it helps this theory that he's, like, this outsider who's come to break down the broken machine kind of thing. But
it's what we call fascism, Corey. It's where we have a cult of personality built around a person. And
I mean, like, this is the type of stuff that used to happen with, like, North Korean propaganda and stuff like that, where it's like great leader killed a bear that was trying to eat a baby. Like, he grabbed the bear by the 2 sides of the mouth and he tore the bear in half. And
ripped it in half. That's how strong he is.
The strongest man in all of North Korea was standing there and going, oh, man, I couldn't do something like that.
And don't forget,
like,
he rode up on a horse without a shirt and then jumped off.
Multiple horses. He had a foot on each horse, and he was just going.
And then he jumped off, ripped the bear in half, gave a wink to the strongest man who was like, I couldn't even do that. Jumped directly from the ground, back on top of the horses.
Several fertile maidens fainted at the moment.
And became pregnant, by the way.
Yeah.
They
just at the glimpse of him tearing the bear in half. It was all it took. There's new children. They're not part of the line of succession, obviously, because there wasn't a actual, like, thing going on there, but you know.
Yeah.
QAnon is I made a reference to my own life when we were talking about this pre-show.
Spoiler.
Which
Corey
is
the source of all this.
Yeah, I started it apparently. When I was a little kid, like 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, and I wanted to be involved in conversations that I knew nothing about, I would just make up things. And I would say, like, well, you know that this is because Texas has a law that makes that illegal. And then my dad would look at me and he'd be like, you don't know anything about what you're talking about. You're just making things up at the moment. And I said, no, I read it somewhere, which is always the way you get around. I don't know how to point myself to the correct, which is the same thing that happens on Facebook where it's like, oh, I saw it somewhere that Hillary Clinton has death camps and the upper.
I love the idea of 7-year-old Corey arguing with his dad about, I read it somewhere. What do you read that I don't read first? Come on now.
What, do you have a subscription to The Economist or something like that? You get out of here, idiot.
See, now he'd probably say something about the liberal rags that your 7-year-old subscribe to. I
mean, nowadays, the 7-year-olds can watch YouTube. I didn't have those options back then. I didn't have the internet or anything. I just had to go to a library if I wanted to learn things.
Yeah, Dad, I picked up the Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't know if you've heard of it and found it in there.
It's in there somewhere. I don't remember exactly where because I read the whole thing and I can't tell you what page exactly it was on, but I read it.
Maybe you should go do some research, Dad.
But the other thing I used to do as a child, because within me, I think the part of me that makes me a writer and makes me want to like create movies and stuff like that is the idea that there's like good and evil in the world and there's good people fighting the evil that's happening. And as a child, I would say like, oh, I like Coke. I don't like Pepsi. So therefore Coke is good. And the CEO of Pepsi is like basically a Bond villain. And like, you know, somewhere he's like in a lightning filled boardroom, like, you know, where the lightning's going on. If outside, it's just like, we need to figure out how to kill as many people with our Pepsi as possible. And the board is like, no, don't do it. That's wrong. It's wrong to kill people. And he's like, I don't care. And then he like releases the poison Pepsi, and then I'll come up with these like elaborate stories about like, well, what you don't know is that the guy who works for Coke is the real freedom fighter in this whole thing, and he's trying to bring down the evil Pepsi empire.
So are you saying that you wrote Hunters decades before it was actually written?
All I'm saying is that this is the type of when I didn't have the ability to create logical arguments for why I felt the things I did, I would come up with things. Mm-hmm. And this is I don't think is uncommon for children, like young children who are trying to understand how things work but don't get like they don't have the experience of many years of seeing how it works to like put it together. Yeah.
And you're building a movie. You're like, okay, so if he's good, then there's got to be a bad guy, and the bad guy's got to do this stuff.
But the problem is that if your whole QAnon conspiracy theory is like Hillary Clinton and Huma Abedin are in some DC hotel ripping the skulls off children and drinking the elixir that's inside their brains, like, okay.
Now, wait. I got to defend.
It's a compelling story. I
defend this particular one because, as you well know, I've kept my youthful appearance by finding every baby I can and breathing in their life force.
Yeah.
I don't eat the head. Eating the head's not necessary.
See, apparently the good stuff is inside the brain.
You just gotta breathe deep. You breathe it in.
I feel like at some point
vampire.
inside of the history of the world, we've done an autopsy on like a child, and we can see whether or not we can identify that liquid goo that's inside of them. That
yes.
Allows for
youth and vitality.
Yeah, ageless wonders and stuff like that.
And again, I breathe that energy in, and that's how I stay so young and supple.
Yeah, you don't have to. You've gotten past the cracking open of the heads and stuff like that. But like, really, don't. Here's my warning to you about QAnon: don't dig too deep because you should dig deep enough to get to the point where you say, "Okay, that's fucking ridiculous." And then you should walk away because
it only gets worse.
Gets worse from there. And the problem is that we kind of talked about it in terms of like Scientology or NRA and Scientology not too long ago. But QAnon is kind of like Scientology for like hillbillies in a way. Like it's like
it's free. You don't have to pay for it.
You don't have to pay for it. But like the if you ever talk to a Scientologist about like, you know, like, oh, I think I'm dealing with some depression. I'm really like I just can't get out of my own head and stuff like that.
Scientology can fix that.
Well, no, it's like, well, that's not real. Depression's not real. You need auditing to get to get what you think is depression out of you because it's really just a ghost or a soul inside of you that needs to be removed.
That Lord Xenu.
Yeah, and like you start listening to that, and if you're a normal person who's just encountering a Scientologist, you're just like, that's fucking crazy. That's not a logical. But if you're the problem
depressed.
is if you're QAnon. I think a lot of people get into QAnon with like some little tiny thing. Like it starts with the like, you know, Hillary Clinton was secretly, you know, helped Benghazi happen. Like she called somebody who orchestrated the whole plot, and like it's a false flag thing that's going on. And she, you know, like the reason why there's so many investigations is because clearly something's wrong, and they need to figure out the bottom of it. But like
I believe that you got me.
Yeah, but you get that one thing right, and then you slowly build upon it, where it's like, you know, Hillary Clinton keeps childhood sex slaves in her basement. And it's just
she's
like
not screwing her husband, so that makes sense.
Well, and then you say to yourself, like, well, I mean, like, I guess it has to make sense because where are all these children going? They have to go someplace, and nobody would ever think they're at Hillary Clinton's place. The problem is that the guy behind QAnon, the anonymous Q, who posts these things on 4chan and 8chan and
AKA
stuff like
Corey Baker.
I should just take credit for it.
Just do it. Why not?
Just be like, hey, yeah, I'm QAnon, by the way. I've just been fucking around. And then unveil the real Q. He's like, he's not Q, I'm Q.
Ha! Gotcha.
Gotcha.
Also, though, you have the opportunity
Welcome to the conversation, Tony Richardson.
I'm really Q, and I was joking about all of this stuff. I was just throwing movie ideas out there, and you guys ran
Dude,
with
I
it.
get high on peyote, and I just write on 8chan. I don't know what the fuck happens.
All right, thanks, Joe Rogan. All right.
But it's so, like, I want it to be known for anybody who is now just getting into the idea that QAnon is out there and is influencing our policy in ways that are shocking and unbelievable. The best thing to do is just tell people that this is fucking ridiculous and explain to them why. And
It won't work.
it won't work, but at some point there will be a sunshine on the other side of this where people will be like, wow, I was fucking crazy for a while there. The people who are, they might not say that out loud.
They're never going to admit that to you, no, but they're going to have that moment.
I mean, like, I think there's a lot of Tea Party people right now who are like, I like the idea of what, I mean, like, the Tea Party when it first started wasn't like a stupid, horrible idea. It was like, let's get less money into the federalized government.
But then the Koch took over and shit went nuts.
But then it started going like a little bit too crazy. And once they started getting like, elected into Congress and stuff like that, it was a little bit too late at that point to like stop it. But I feel like if you talk to somebody who was like a Tea Party loyalist at the time, they've probably like moved slightly away from some of the crazier Tea Party things, kept the base level of it. But now they're in the ecosystem where the QAnon stuff is going to proliferate. So if you are a Tea Party person, you are watching Fox News, you're reading Breitbart, you're doing any of these, like,
dude who got punched in the face, and
Richard Spencer.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've lost Richard Spencer.
Yeah.
You've lost the far right because he's like, listen, I fully believe that Hitler is going to be reborn in the body of a new child, and the whites are going to take over the world. But this shit is too crazy for me, and I'm out. It's over. And I'm like, we've reached this point that you lost Richard Spencer?
The worst part, I think, is that at the end, people want some sort of rationale for the upper echelons of a system where rich and powerful people have influence above normal people. If you live in Kentucky, you're just some person. You're not politically connected or anything like that. Call Mitch McConnell and see how quickly they get on the issue that you call them about. If I say, hey, Mitch McConnell, I have $1 million I want to give you, I have lunch with him the next day. Like, that, it's not tough. Like, and if you're Jeff Bezos or any rich connected person who's able to spend money freely on political.
Remember the rice example we used a couple weeks ago? Who's like,
take one grain of rice away from Bezos's incredible pile and you give it to Mitch McConnell, and now Mitch McConnell is in your pocket. And if you call him and say, hey, there's this new tax that's 50% on people who make over $1 billion, I'm not down for that.
Not a fan of that.
Yeah, you have influence, but literally everyone else in Kentucky could call Mitch McConnell and say, I don't want this. But if there's enough money involved in doing it, then it'll happen.
Well,
it's not like a cabal of Ellen DeGeneres and Tom Hanks and Hillary Clinton and like Adam Schiff has a hotel room in the W Hotel where he's putting children in acid and shit like that. Like, that's just not. Number one, you cannot try and get 20 people. Get 20 people in a room and try and get them to do something.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that film people have been dealing with forever. Like, the idea of like we're hiring protesters to go out and like act out in front of crowds and stuff like that. Like, try and get 20 people who are there to work, there to act, there to be people in the background to do background work. It is fucking impossible. It is like herding cats, and it is the worst, and it is impossible to do. If you work at a medium-sized company, and you're trying to tell all your people, hey, by the way, there's no more hats. We're not allowed to wear hats at the office because some reason.
Yeah.
There's a problem with hats. It's unprofessional. We want to have a more professional appeal. So no more hats. And then you would get, 17 of the 20 people would be like, oh, okay, sure, I guess no hats. And then you get 3 people who fucking fight you every single day. It's just like, this isn't a hat, this is a sombrero. And it's just like,
guy who never wore a hat before
Yeah.
ever wears a hat because you're not going to tell me what to do.
yeah,
Bro, you don't never wear a hat. I didn't think you were going to be a problem. But no, you're not going to tell me what to do.
I'm not going to follow your fucking rules. Like,
Okay. All right.
do I really need to get the boss in here and tell him, have him sit you down and say, like, please don't wear a fucking hat?
Yeah.
Like, the problem is that, like, so much of this ideal of, like, this, cabal of people who are involved in upper reaches of child pornography and
Murder.
trafficking and
Yeah.
murder and all this sort of stuff. Like, it's just reaching you at your base. If I told you there was a story, like, I have a story about some guy who murdered and sexually assaulted children. You'd be like, I hope the story ends with him being in jail and dead.
Yep. Nope. He's powerful.
No, he's a congressman.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, no, how could that happen? It's like, because they think he's great,
Well, and
Because he's Joe Biden.
You're exactly right that so like listen, I am a conspiracy nut. I love conspiracies.
Connoisseur, if you will.
I acknowledge the fact that most of the things are not true.
Yeah.
I enjoy learning enough about it that I can argue both sides depending on who I stumble upon. So it's like, what, you think 9/11 was planes? Oh, buddy, let me tell you how it wasn't planes. But then I get the other guy who's like,
Do you know what temperature jet fuel burns
right,
at?
yeah. But then I get the other guy and I'm just like, well, no, but you understand that camera's moving at 6 frames or 20 frames a minute. So a plane moving at 400 miles an hour would only be caught on 2 frames.
Right.
So it's logical that it only catches 2 frames of it. I can argue both sides of it. But you're right in that something gets you in. And
Yeah.
I have noticed this Save the Children thing is drawing a lot of people in.
Yeah.
Someone realized, like, this is how we get people in. If you even talk to people who recognize that they're like, hey, yeah, this QAnon, this Save the Children thing is real. We need to do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, but what about the, drinking blood or dissolving bodies in acid in a hotel room? No, that's too much. But this part of it's true. You don't get to pick and choose which part of the conspiracy you believe.
Well, not only that, like the thing that fascinates me the most is if I was, say we had a sports gambling show, right?
Sure.
And every week we talked about like, here's the lines and here's where you should bet and stuff like that. If every single week I was wrong, I was really fucking wrong.
Yes.
And every week, regardless, I had 10 picks last week and I was 0 for 10, but I come in the next episode and I'm just like, man, people who listen to my advice, they really won this weekend. Oh man.
Nope.
I came back from Vegas with my picks and $1 million in my pocket. I'm reinvesting it this week. My first pick, Orioles to win the World Series. Totally not a ridiculous thing. You should do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever stupid thing that's going to blow up in my face is. But QAnon has, the guy Q has apparently had, like Hillary Clinton is going to be arrested in the second week of October.
Yeah.
And like, then the problem is that when it doesn't happen, when Hillary Clinton is actually walking among us and stuff like that, like people will make up like, oh no, she was. What you don't know is that this is a Hillary doppelganger.
Oh,
this
yeah.
this is somebody to make up the appearance that Hillary's still out there, but she's doing evil things from behind the prison cell that Trump put her in. And there was like the Mueller report is going to expose all the like the reason why Trump hasn't fired Mueller is because he's really working on bringing down all these like hacked child molesters all over Hollywood and the government and stuff like that. Like
using your gambling example though, like if you go 0 for 10 9 weeks in a row, and then you go 1 for 10 in week 10, it doesn't make you more reliable on week 11, and that's what we're dealing with.
The 1 for 10 isn't even happening though. This guy is wrong all the fucking time. Like he's never right, and everything is so cryptic that it's like that and believe me, I haven't spent time breaking down every single one of his
He's occasionally right.
8chan things, but like it's like Jesus Christ, like
hey, turns out there was a pedophile ring with a jet taking girls to an island. Not necessarily the people you think are involved. This is not a Democratic cabal. This was a powerful billionaire, but
yeah, and Trump was on that plane.
Trump's on that plane too. Yeah,
Dershowitz was on that plane. Prince Andrew was on that plane. Clinton was on that plane. Everyone, regardless of your political party.
I imagine though that,
by the way, not to just wildly postulate here, but I imagine if we made a list of presidents who've slept with somebody who's underage, Trump would probably be way the fuck up on on that list.
Well,
there were probably presidents who were sleeping with 16-year-olds when it was still appropriate to do so, and Trump has more on his fucking bedpost than them. You know,
using that example, I just imagine that Q makes this whole thing. Corey, it's clearly you. I'm just going to tell you. And then
this is the reason why I didn't want to talk about it so much.
You make this crazy claim about a Lolita Express and a plane that goes to an island, and then you're like, the Jeffrey Epstein story breaks, and you're like, a what? There was? Hey, I got one. But you're just making shit up.
Yeah.
And then eventually one thing hits. And I'm not going to say that's the thing, but he's been right, kind of right occasionally. And everyone's like, well, see, there's the thing. I'm like, yeah, but he's wrong a lot.
Like all the time.
He's not wrong. It's not really Hillary. Hillary's in jail.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, now you're just making excuses on why he's right. Like that's not the same thing.
So if you encounter somebody, just how about this? Because you're not going to be able to like convince them that they're wrong. Why don't you just say to them, I would like you to help back up this with credible information. Like,
I am ready to spread this far and wide. This sounds amazing.
Because the problem is that, like, most pedophiles and stuff like that operate within their own lockdown environment. Like, there's many stories of pedophiles in Hollywood and stuff like that who have these lavish parties like the Great Gatsby, and some 15-year-olds sneak in because they're like, oh, it's a Hollywood party up in the hills. And then, these awful people, these awful pedophiles, like, find a way to, shepherd them away to a bedroom and do unspeakable things and stuff like that.
I can make you famous.
Put you in my movie and stuff like that. Like, we're definitely, by the way, didn't make the rundown on this one, but we are going to be talking about Ron Meyer at some point. Yeah. And that whole story as that one develops a little bit. But trust me, you're going to want to tune in for that.
But don't try, I think my overarching message is don't try logic. I always just go with okay, I'm with you. Where can I find more information so I can spread this around?
Yeah.
And then try to get them to see that, like, QAnon Post Daily isn't the most reliable source. And
right.
I'm not expecting CNN. Can you give me literally anything that's
But, I mean, like, the problem is that, like, a lot of these things, too, are going to be, like, the response will be, I can't prove to you, you just have to, like, sort of believe. Like, the idea that, like, Adam Schiff has children and fucking bats of acid in the W Hollywood. Yeah. It's just, like, I can tell you, like, as somebody who is close enough to the W Hollywood, it's probably not happening. Like a 0.0000001% chance that it's actually happening. Like,
but can you tell me 100% certain that it's not?
Can I assure you that it's not? No, because and this is the problem. Like, it's just going to lead to the people are taking advantage of these people. First of all,
yeah,
and then second of all, it's just going to lead to more ridiculous nonsense, like the Pizzagates. This is just an extension of like what was happening at Pizzagate.
Yep.
Where the Clintons had some, children stashed away in the bottom of this
random pizza shop.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then some guy comes in with a gun and says, "Show me the children," and there's plenty of incidents where this has turned into violence and murder, and like that's. Actual people are losing their lives over this nonsense. So
I can tell you one thing with 100% certainty, there, Corey.
Yeah.
The GOP, whose convention is underway right now, does not have a political party platform.
Yeah, that's true.
For maybe the first time since the Golden Age. And by that, I mean the first time since a party didn't exist anymore. In the early 1800s, there was one party because the other party, which I want to say is the Whig Party at that time, just was like, we're not even going to hold a convention, guys. We're not going to if you want to run for Congress as a Whig, that's great. We don't have a presidential candidate. And I've put up next to me over here the GOP party platform. And I'm realizing now it's so tiny that you can't read it. And it looks kind of like a platform.
Yeah.
But it's not a platform. What it says is we back the president of the United States. And we are essentially going to roll over the 2016 platform, not make a new one, just 2016 all over again. And that begs the question for me, if 2016 was, hey, we're going to make America great again, and 2020 is, we've done so much good work, we are absolutely on track to do it, why are we repeating the 2016 platform again? I don't know. But that is what the Republicans have chosen to do. And the Democrats, listen, I'm not going to say the Democrats have done a fantastic job. They didn't. I didn't like the platform that came out.
Yeah.
But I'm an extreme leftist, so of course I don't like that they want more progressive.
It's more leftist than it's ever been
Yes.
in the history of the Democratic Party.
It's also more centrist than it's ever been in the history of the Democratic Party.
Yes,
They're picking and choosing topics instead of making a progressive agenda.
Yes, but I would argue that at the very least they are making a effort towards the most important aspects of the left that are the talking points right now.
And unlike-
racial equality, police injustice, like climate change, Green New Deal, healthcare, Medicare for all these sorts of things are way more important to the party platform now than they were when Bernie ran 4 years ago.
And I'm not a QAnon believer. I'm also not of the belief that Joe Biden, after 50 years in political policy making, is all of a sudden going to become a progressive and change everything.
Or a socialist, as he's been accused of all night on the...
I mean, I think that he is far more likely to take us back to Bush than he even is to take us back to Obama. Because I have a feeling he's going to over-assert himself to the center and be like, well, Trump's so far right. We need to just bring the country back from that. And that's a compromise that I'm not willing to make. But nonetheless, it's a platform, though.
I'm willing to handle that situation after Joe Biden is elected president. I have never before been of the mind that you should just vote for somebody because it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, but
number one, there is no better alternative. I'm not saying this as somebody who like hates on third party candidates or stuff. I've voted the last couple elections for third party candidates, you know? There is not somebody who has a chance of getting enough votes to possibly make any kind of dent in what is going on right here. So let's not worry about them so much. It really is a conversation at this point in time about Trump and Biden. And we can hopefully change that in the future and get more candidates in the field and stuff like that. But right now, these are our choices, and one of them is not an actual choice because it is the clown show that is happening on the GOP side is ridiculous. And you know what? Conventions, I've never really been much of a convention person. Because
no, you watch more than I have. But yeah, neither of us has been like, let's watch the party to celebrate the party.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I will usually, I have a thing about wanting to watch the acceptance speeches because I like, those are usually what everything's building towards. But, you know, the Democrats did a very nice job this past week with their convention. And it highlighted why, you know, Joe Biden can be trusted and like why he's doing this and all that sort of stuff. It did the best job possible of putting Joe in the most favorable light, which is what you're supposed to be doing with these events.
That's the goal. Make him look as good as possible.
And all of it was framed in like, so the big winning moment of the non-known political speakers is there was a young boy named Braden who was dealing with stuttering, and Joe Biden, who famously dealt with a stutter when he was young, talked to him and told him about some poetry that he used and how he broke down words to help him and stuff like that. And then he gave a speech at the DNC where he did stutter from time to time, but you know, you could see him working through this problem to try and like, you know, overcome it. Yeah. And, you know, he says that, you know, this experience has been great and he wants to help other people with their stutters. So, I mean, like, this is one of those things that you can show where you show Joe Biden, like, taking time out to help a child with something that is relevant to him. You know,
does it make
like,
him a better president? No. But it
No.
makes him look human, and that's the whole point of the thing.
Right. I mean, like, the problem is that right now the GOP convention is happening, or should I say Trump 2020 and RNC convention.
Yes. Presented by the RNC.
Represented by the RNC. The problem is that this is all about dear leader going on the other side, and the radical Democrats who are out there to ruin the very fiber of American being and blah blah blah. I know for sure at some point before we're done with this week, we're going to have some sort of ridiculous thing that has been said that is going to become I imagine every night is going to have some version of, oh my God, did you believe this guy said this? I haven't really seen, like, it seems like Matt Gaetz said that MS-13 is going to move in next door if Joe Biden becomes president.
Yeah, somehow
like,
that's...
you know, those kind of ridiculous claims that... I'd be more worried about the white nationalists moving in next door than the MS-13, but...
Yeah.
Apparently, we have different things
concerns.
we're worried about. Yeah.
But if you have any questions about where Corey and I lie on our support for president candidates and legitimate president candidates, make sure you check out No Brainer, the new song by CB5 featuring Bobby MB and Cheek the Rapper. It's available now on YouTube and SoundCloud. You can find links in my social media, but it's a good one.
I've never been so old. I mean, literally every second I've never been so old, but specifically at that moment, that recorded moment, I've never been so old.
I am just glad I get to promote the thing that Corey is not a huge fan of on the podcast. That's amazing. So that's good. I don't know that you're not a huge fan of it. It just, I am not a professional song producer.
Yeah.
So there's only so much that we can do.
So there's like two sides of this. Like I like the fact that you're getting into the idea of recording a little bit and that you want to like practice. And I realize that early products are not going to be as good as the ones that will eventually come from the work.
Much better than the very first, the Roxanne cover. This is way better than that.
And you know, I want to support you in your creative endeavors like this. My personal problem is that I have not been practicing my singing. I have not been in trying to be in tip-top shape. And when I re-recorded, because God forbid you don't want to listen to the first one.
I love the first one.
As bad as this one was, the first one was way worse. I took all day warming up my voice.
Mm-hmm.
It was like 10 hours of singing all throughout the day just to get to the point where I felt like I could record this. And I still felt like kind of like out in the wind because so much is going into like it's amazing when you're used to listening for effects that are put into music and like voices and stuff like that. Like I can be like, oh, okay. At various points in time during the course of the vocal that they recorded for Justin Bieber, there's like 70 or 80 different effects that are being used to perfectly orchestrate every, you know, and like it's not like DJ Khaled is really back there like mixing, like, oh, we got to dial up the auto-tune a little bit here.
He bought the beat and now it's a DJ Khaled beat.
Right, however it works. But I mean, like, you know, I'm not trying to say Justin can't sing. Clearly he can sing, but there's a lot that's going on. It's like when you see a model on a Cosmo or something like that. It's like, yeah, she's a very beautiful woman. There's a lot going on there. Yeah. There's a lot. More than meets the eye that's happening in this picture.
I love that the guy who complains so much about auto-tune in music sent me a message where he said, where's the auto-tune? I thought you were going to auto-tune this thing. And I said, I did run the auto-tune. And he said, not enough. Run it again.
Well, my point was that this is a song with auto-tune. So it's going to sound really weird if it's me trying to hit these. Good. The other thing, too, is I kept, not to be so inside baseball about this, but I kept trying to going like, oh, so there's a heavy auto-tune effect here. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to flatten this note a little bit so that it like
tunes up.
The auto-tune like picks it. And I was like, I was breaking down the track. I was like going through the lyrics and I'm just like, little flat here, like hit this note a little bit less. Mm-hmm. I was like, the auto-tune will pick me up. And then I would listen to it and I'm like, none of that happened. This was a very bad mistake on my part.
Did not work as well as I thought.
Here's the good news though. I've written a song myself to perform. I will again go through the process of breaking my voice so that it's capable of singing again. Mm-hmm. And then after that I will record it, and if it's worth it, then it'll be released. If it's not, then I think I'm retiring from singing for the time.
And just by comparison, just so the guys know, I walked in, opened the thing that I had written, 6 weeks beforehand, and said, all right, let's hit record. Took 2 takes, walked out of the studio, and I'm like, all right, who's up next? And however it ended up is how it goes out, because it's the doing the thing that's important, not necessarily making it professional.
Well, one day I'm going to teach you about how long they take in the studio recording these things.
I work in the music business. I understand this. All right, so we have a lot to cover, so let's roll through. I do want to mention there's a developing story in Wisconsin. Jacob Blake is the man that is, you can see here to my right. Corey and I have both watched the video of his interaction with police. I don't know how they're going to try and justify this, but I don't see any justification of it. It's a developing story. I don't want Corey to give us a hot take that he regrets later. I know we're trying to avoid that, but we just have to touch on it because it just happened.
Well, I mean, I think the only thing from the video that you can see right now that would be part of a defense is the cops told him to stop and he didn't stop.
Yeah.
Which will be the logical thing that will come from people who are trying to dissect this in the next couple hours, I imagine. over the next couple days while we're still waiting for information to sort of break loose. But the problem is that much like everything in the society, we want it so quick, but it's going to take a while for us to figure out what part of the story is real and what part of the story is not, and what part of the, like, what happened and how did this all get here. I think the one thing I would like to leave people with who are trying to determine where they are on this issue is that there's almost no crime that he could have committed that would have been worthy of shooting him 7 times in the back in front of his own children. And we're just going to have to not have this conversation if you can't at least come to that point. Like, you know, if you're Charlie Manson and you get arrested and then you go to trial and you're found guilty and they say, we're sentencing you to death, and assuming that, you know, he was allowed to go on with the death penalty. Like he didn't luck out into being in California. But he actually went on to the death penalty. There would be some random person who would be the executioner in that case. Yep. It wouldn't, you know, in the olden days, you'd wear a bag over your head so that people wouldn't be able to tell who you were. Yep. And you probably worked at the prison or something like that, or you might have been brought in so that you didn't have any kind of like.
Now they have 2 doctors. They both flip a switch, so nobody knows which switch was actually connected to the machine.
Right.
And that way, nobody knows it's the state doing the killing.
Right. But they don't bring Charlie Manson out in front of 15 cops and let them go wild on him. I mean, that's
in front
not
of his own children.
That's never part of the argument. Like the cops should, and the problem is that the warrior cop thing has become such a huge part of how these police departments run and how they train and stuff like that. And talk to a cop who will give you the like, you don't understand, I'm under assault every day, these dangerous people, and I never know when this traffic stop is going to escalate into somebody trying to shoot me and stuff like that.
Are you though?
Well, I mean, like, the problem is that, like, you know, much like coronavirus, you know, this kind of thinking can impact your how you take it. People in Maryland probably are, you know, don't think about coronavirus as like a threat that could be around every corner because there's less cases there. Yeah. There's less like wear your mask everywhere you go. There's less like things that are closed and all that sort of stuff. Meanwhile, in LA or Florida or somewhere where it's really heavy, you're saying to yourself like, oh shit, I left my apartment. I walked 10 steps out and I didn't have my mask on. I hope I don't have coronavirus. Like, yeah, like if the thought process that you go into being a police officer is there's dangerous criminals who are going to try and kill me at every corner, then yes, you're going to be a little jumpy and you're going to shoot people. Maybe we shouldn't have them do that. Maybe we should have them open to the possibility that not everyone is a hardened criminal MS-13 gangbanger. You know, like.
Well, I just go back to, again, we don't have all the facts, but I go back to the fact that there is a crime called resisting arrest. And the definition of that crime is literally you telling the cop, I've done nothing wrong, I'm not going to go with you, which is a crime. You cannot tell a cop, I've done nothing wrong, I'm not going with you. And from the looks of it, it looks as though he said, I tried to get in here and do a good Samaritan thing, I'm out. Yeah. And they said, stop moving. And he said, no, I'm going to get in the car and go. And then they shot him in front of his kids in the back, which, by the way, Deadwood, a town that was known to be lawless in Arizona territory, had only two things that could get you executed. One, horse thievery. You steal a man's horse, you're going to jail.
Clearly.
And the other was murder. And the classification of murder was to not meet a man face to face and allow him to draw on you. If you shoot him in the back, you get hung. So even in the most lawless place in the history of the United States, horse thievery and shooting a man in the back were the 2 things that could get you hung.
Yeah.
They grabbed this guy. By the way, also, I don't like chokeholds, but you couldn't chokehold the guy. You couldn't do anything else other than draw your gun and shoot him in the back.
Well, I mean, the other thing I don't understand necessarily about this situation, it just maybe police procedure in general. There's 2 cops that are following him with guns drawn, right? Why can't the first cop, the one who shoots him, be the one who is I'm going to physically restrain you and put, because, you know, if they just grabbed him by the shoulder and threw him to the ground and handcuffed him and dragged him away, then that's one thing. I mean,
And we're still going to talk about that.
I don't appreciate the fact that you feel like you need to do that, but if he's legitimately resisting arrest, like you are under arrest, hold on.
Yeah.
You were under arrest, and then he goes, "Fuck you guys, I'm not going."
Mm-hmm.
To an extent, this is not an optional conversation. If they have
The
put,
Constitution disagrees with you.
but I'm saying
sure.
like if there's no classically, if I said, "Am I under arrest?" and they say no, bye. I can walk away. If you say, "Am I under arrest?" and they say yes, then I can't buy that situation. I have to be in some way engaged in the process of said arrest, right? And that hopefully,
I know
what you're saying, but I'm saying
hate
like
it.
at some point, you know, certain steps might need to be taken to escalate that situation. And while I wouldn't like the idea of somebody being thrown to the ground in such situation, that might be the most extreme version of what we would hope for in the future.
And by the way,
like
he is alive, but thrown to the ground, arrested. He's not on life support, fighting for his life.
Yeah.
For something that, by the way, I don't know what crime they're going to put on him. I'm certain he's going to be charged with something.
Well, you know what I know is probably in the books, and I don't know this guy's criminal history or anything like that, but if he has any criminal history, that's going to become the fucking story.
Oh,
because
of course,
that's always he could be the good Samaritan who came in to break up a domestic violence situation that was happening in front of him and gets caught in this rodeo of you're the man, so clearly you're the one beating or whatever ends up happening here. But at the same time, it's so fucking weird to me that, like, you know, he got busted for pot 10 years ago or something like that.
That's
hypothetically.
yep.
Just saying,
No,
you know, like
that's
some random crime. And then it's just like, well, this hardened criminal who has multiple offenses on his record, like things that would be legal in other parts of the country and maybe are illegal here, make him the hardened criminal that
also might be legal in Wisconsin now. I don't know, but he's carrying a gram, and now you can carry 2 grams legally, or get a civil citation instead of a criminal. But he's a hardened criminal who carried drugs.
Well, he was arrested once for parking in a handicap spot. This is awful. Human being.
He's a beast. I don't know why he shouldn't be treated like a human. Anyway, so developing story, and we'll talk about that more when we know more. I just say, I want to establish right now, one, the story, you're absolutely right, will be not what he did this time, but what he's done before. And 2, I don't see what they're going to charge him with other than resisting arrest. And again, that the definition of that is the cop says, don't go anywhere, you've committed a crime, and you say, I've committed no crime, I'm not going with you. That is in and of itself a crime. So welcome to Circle World, where things don't make sense and the points don't matter.
I mean, the hope is, though, that in certain situations like this, you would probably have better information on this than I would. The last I heard of this, the resisting arrest kind of goes away most times if there's not a felony that's going with it, depending on the situation. I mean, like, obviously every situation is going to be different.
No, but usually it's that's what they use to arrest you and take you off the street, and then you drop it and you released and you walk away.
Like,
and
if they find that the thing that they were arresting you for is not going to hold up in court, then the resisting arrest goes away with it.
Yeah, but also
then also you can't. I mean, there are situations obviously where people have gotten hammered on the resisting arrest thing, whether or not it.
And hey, you'd like to get that expunged? You have to sign this thing that waives all liability for the police department.
Yeah.
So either you keep the arrest with no charge, or expunge everything and waive your liability for the police.
Yeah.
Yay!
Hooray!
So, you know, in a world that's falling apart, luckily, surprisingly, Trump is a rock, a bastion of consistency. Not in a good way, but at least he's consistent. His world
Are
is
you on
universal.
QAnonThoughts.com? Or what?
His world is essentially falling apart, as it has been for a long time. This week, somebody new arrested and serving time from his administration.
Yeah, so there will be a lot more on this story. We kind of wanted to just touch on it so that people are aware that it's happening in case they didn't know. But Steve Bannon, former head of the Trump campaign, and then for a brief period of time in the White House,
advisor to the president.
Yeah, it was an unofficial official title.
Yeah.
It was like chief election officer of the president, or some nonsense. But he was arrested on allegedly profiting off of a Build the Wall charity. Did they categorize it as a charity? I don't even remember.
Yeah, no, I think it was a 501c3. They organized themselves as a charity. So it was supposed to be. And by the way, here's the thing. If they had done what they said they were going to do, all on the up and up.
Yeah.
We don't like the Build the Wall thing, but you can feel free to raise money to purchase land or to purchase the rights to build a private wall on land.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. Not great, but it's legal.
Within your legal rights.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. But he went a little far.
Yeah, well, I mean, the siphoning off of money for personal benefit will get you every time. The government doesn't like that when you start a charity and you start taking hundreds of thousands of dollars on your own.
We talked about this last week. He could have increased his salary as chairman of the nonprofit and made the travel somehow based on doing work for the...
Well, and, Bannon.
Not Biden.
Not Biden.
Thanks,
Bannon.
QAnon.
Steve Bannon.
All right.
Steve Bannon was not as Biden who did it the whole time. You could tell because of this one time that Biden wore 5 shirts. I don't know. The thing about this whole thing is that Bannon is such a fucking weird character.
Yeah.
And he was a lawyer, wasn't he? At one point.
I don't want to speak on that. I don't. Let me check. Go ahead.
Okay. I want to say that at one point in his Breitbart career, he was leaning a lot on some law degree that he had gotten at some point, but that might not be accurate. So Rob will pipe in with that. I just don't understand how you think you can get away. He said these charges are all fucked up and they're not real and everything like that, but this seems pretty open and shut unless he makes some sort of argument of oh no, we bought this boat because it was going to help us build the wall. We were gonna give it away at a 50-50 raffle or something. There doesn't seem to be a lot of rationale for what is happening here specifically.
So he worked for some legal companies, but he has an MA in business and an MBA.
Oh, okay.
But he has worked for the Islamic Law Center, which isn't pro-Islamic people. It's keep people out. But so not actually.
So maybe I was confused by his previous legal work or his work at legal companies.
Paul Manafort apparently had some legal education.
Okay, maybe that's where I got diverged.
There's so many of Trump's administration being arrested, Corey. I can understand how you might be confused between the one guy who got arrested and the other guy who just got arrested.
Check out the bingo card because at various places on the internet, you'll see the pictures of all the people who have been associated with Trump who've been arrested or
on a bingo card
in jail of some kind. The only person really close to the president who isn't Trump or Pence that doesn't seem to be in any kind of legal trouble so far has been Kellyanne Conway.
Bit of a problem with her, though.
But she's stepping away, too. So
unfortunately. Kellyanne, pictured here to my right. Yeah, of course, you know who she is. You may not know who George Conway is, her husband. They are a political power couple.
In a very weird way.
In the spirit of who was Clinton's guy and his Republican wife?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. The Cajun.
Yeah, it's the Economy Stupid with the Raging Cajun.
Fuck.
Bald head guy.
Yeah, it'll come to me in a second.
Nonetheless, so there was a political couple from the Clinton administration where the husband was a centrist leftist who supported Clinton, and the wife was a Republican.
I think she worked for Bush at one point, or Reagan, or something like that.
A hitman, but not really a hitman.
Yeah.
But she just came in on campaigns. So Kellyanne and George are that, except for Kellyanne has gone to the Trump boat and George went to the Never Trumper boat. And he is actually one of the founding members of the Lincoln Project.
Who is doing incredible work, by the way.
Oh, yeah. And from our point of view, he's doing really good work.
My buddy Ian was in one of the commercials here recently where he was in a coma in the hospital. And then he woke up and, they were all Republicans, the whole family. Yeah. And it's why are you all wearing masks? And that whole thing. It was pretty good. So go check that out.
I have become...
James Carville, by the way.
James Carville. And his wife was Madeline or something with an M.
Wasn't it Mary Madeline? No.
Mary Madeline. It might have been Mary Madeline. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Nonetheless,
I'm trying to remember something that happened 30 years ago.
I've been drawn into this story because in my day work, I work for a company and we are involved in TikTok. And Kellyanne and George's daughter has become a bit of a celebrity on TikTok for being a very anti-Trump but leftist, not like her dad, just very much like Black Lives Matter.
Boy, has she.
Yes. And so there was a little bit of controversy over the weekend as
Mary Matlin, yeah.
Mary Matlin, that's what it is. Where she may have overstepped a bit and gone a little bit, in their minds, crazy. She may have lost it a bit. And because of that, both of them are going to be stepping away.
And she served under Reagan, was campaign director for George H.W. Bush, was an assistant to President George W. Bush, and counselor to Vice President Dick Cheney. So
Yes.
that's her resume there. But, she was basically helping the Bush versus Clinton campaign while Carter was on the
Clinton campaign.
Yeah, on the Clinton campaign. So kind of weird coming home every night after that.
It's just like we don't talk about work. We just can't talk about work at all. That's it. And I suppose that probably Kellyanne and George were much the same way. Like, I know how you feel about Trump. You know how I feel. Let's just leave it. And maybe that could have been fine, except for they have a 15-year-old daughter with a TikTok account, and she was causing a lot of trouble. So I don't think either one of them has said this is the reason. But they both
they've said family. Yeah, they've said family, and that things are obviously very weird with what's going on with coronavirus, and kids not being in school has changed a lot of things, and blah blah blah. So we'll see. I think that it's a little bit. There was a headline I saw not too long ago that I think crystallized my point pretty well, which is it's kind of weird when Kellyanne steps away for family reasons, but doesn't care about all the families that she's affected by the decisions he's made.
Yeah.
So you have the luxury of being able to step away and try and get your 15-year-old daughter in line. But there's a lot of people who don't have those kind of luxuries, who are dealing with much more serious issues. And maybe she just needs to...
She won't. It doesn't. She's not going to consider her actions at all.
I don't know.
And I mean, in the end, though, it comes down to the fact that I think she is the last remaining original member of Trump's support. And we see this from presidents where they change out as they go into their second term, usually. But usually they don't all end up in jail, other than one.
Usually somebody stands through the whole
going into the second term.
Podesta with Obama and stuff like that. There's a lot of people who were at the very beginning of Obama that made it all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will leave once it's sort of in lame duck territory. That's a classic time where somebody senior and official will leave the office to start working on
if you've watched West Wing,
on the board of a charity.
If you've watched West Wing, you see that they leave to go find the next great candidate to go run that campaign.
Well, Josh does, but others get resentful over being left, not being a part of the new thing.
I was about to say Sorkin, but that's not Sorkin. Anyway, one last thing this week.
One last thing, and praise be to the president of New York who decided to make it a one-party consent state, because Mary Trump had a secretly recorded conversations with her and her aunt. Mary Trump is the niece of President Trump. So
the aunt is the one who is pictured here. That's Trump's sister.
Donald Trump's older sister. She was a federal court judge for a long time. It's Trump Barry, I think. I can't remember. She married a Barry.
Yeah,
so
but she definitely kept the Trump name because
it's
so well known in New York.
You can't get anywhere without the Trump name.
Maybe regretting that now.
But you have to get into this a little bit, because the things that she says about Trump are just incredible. The cruelness and the how petty and awful he is, and he's never been like this, and he's always been awful, but this is particularly
I saw some excerpts of it, and I thought immediately about Ted Bundy's brother talking about him and being like, as soon as I saw his writing, I knew it was him, and he was always a loner, and he always had these crazy ideas, but this is a new level. I always sensed he was kind of a sociopath, but to kill people with bombs. And that was talking about the Unabomber And this woman is talking about the president of the United States. So take that with whatever grain of salt you will.
Yeah, so a couple things that she said here. President Trump has no principles and you can't trust him. And his base, I mean, by God, if you're a religious person, you want to help people, not do this. In addition, there was it's the phoniness of it all. Yeah. It's the phoniness and the cruelty. Donald is cruel. Like, God, if I got to the point where my sister was talking about how fucking cruel I was.
Okay, so I'm going to say, when I get to the point that my sister is talking about how cruel I am. Yeah, you chased me around the house with a knife once. Listen, if you've never grown up with siblings, you don't know what it's like, all right? Sometimes you get drop kicked in the chest or you get punched in the stomach and your dad runs over and says, that's how Kirk... Anyway. That's how Charlie Chaplin died. Break it up.
It's Houdini.
That's
how Houdini died. A funny story from my dad. He literally, me and my brother were just like punching each other, and then I hit Brendan in the stomach, and then my dad, I think, we were at like a pizza place or something where he had to travel some distance to like come to separate us, and he's like pushing people out of the way. He separates the two of us, and he like gets in our face and he grabs his teeth, like gritting them up and putting on the voice, the dad like stern talking voice, and he's just like, "Don't do that. That's how Houdini died." It's just like we're both looking at each other like,
okay,
all right. Thanks. You know what? It might also have killed Houdini though.
What's that?
We don't know, but it might have been theanthem.com. Corey to theanthem.com. The Anthem on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the listener line 443-219-7595.
What's that number again?
443-219-7595. You can find more of me at my website, CoreyBakerFilmmaker.com, Facebook.com/CoreyBakerFilm, and at LegendCB5 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I said I was going to do a video last week, and I didn't do it last week, so I'll do a video this week. The problem is that I'm really trying to do better work, and I'm trying to think about it more, and then I do that, like, I think about it too much, and I'm not the doing it part, so I have to get more assertive on the part where I do the task at hand. So. And
you had a freedom last week that you don't have now.
I know. God damn it.
Just wasted that week.
I know.
Oh, but listen, Corey and I have a different policy on life. I am about volume. I'm just pumping out lots of volume, and Corey goes with quality. You want every single one to be quality. But the unfortunate nature of that is then you can't say things like, you can find me at Robert N. Cheek on all your social networks. You can find my political campaign at Rob Cheek for Prez on all social networks. You can find the reviews that I do, 2 per week, every single week, without fail. Thursday and one day in between at Everyman Movie on all your social networks. And you can check out youtube.com/Rob Cheek, where you can find my prodigious and prolific posting of not only the Everyman Movie review, but parody videos and life journaling and everything else that I do. You can find it there. And of course, you can find links to all of that also at robertncheek.com, my home on the web.
Don't forget about the books.
Oh, and the books. They're available on Amazon. You can find those there.
Buy Rob's books.
Thank you. Yeah. I have so much going on, Corey. I'm currently doing so many things and producing so much content that I just can't keep track of all of it. So
I'm at the point right now where most of my time is spent writing. And by most of my time spent writing, I mean staring off into the void, like quietly speaking to myself, going like, how the fuck am I going to do this?
Yeah. Well,
what am I going to do? I'm a hack. People are going to discover me.
You are not famous enough to have that kind of insecurity yet. But we discussed earlier, we'd like to have a goal that at some point in 2020, we are producing new content every single day. That Sunday through Saturday, you have something new coming out. Yeah. And what we've learned thus far, about 2 months into that adventure, is I am going to produce 7 days of content, new stuff every single day for you. And Corey will be involved in one shape or form. Here on the podcast on one day, he'll be featured on a song parody that comes out on Friday.
Listen, if you're doing all the work, all I have to do is ride the coattails. I don't see what the problem is here.
Yeah. Until that one point where the lack of sleep just drives me insane, and I murder every single person that I know, and then take them to a suite at the W Hotel in Anthem and Acid.
Oh, hey, Adam.
Adam Schiff, got something I can borrow there, buddy?
We have rooms right next to each other. Well, I think we've done good here today.
We've done something. I don't know if it's good. It's most certainly not.
Most certainly not.
As always, you're listening to the Oh the Anthem podcast, part of the Oh the Anthem digital network. For Corey, this is Rob. Have a great week, everybody.
R.I.P. Goody.